recognizes the gentlelady from Illinois for her questions. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Admiral, thank you for being here today. We know the Coast Guard does an incredible job with what you have, but also remains chronically under-resourced. The Coast Guard does life-saving work to respond to maritime disasters, combat the flow of illegal drugs, counter China, and prevent cyber attacks. I strongly support large increases to your budget, probably even larger than you've requested in some areas. But I'm concerned that this administration's political goals are shifting those limited resources away from strategic theaters where bad actors are aggressively testing American resolve. In your written testimony, you stated that the Coast Guard is, quote, surging operational forces to the U.S.-Mexico border and the Gulf of Mexico. So my question for you is, where specifically are those forces and resources to support them coming from? What theaters and missions were they assigned to before this surge? How many deportation flights has the Coast Guard flown, and why is that the best use of the aviation assets?
Ranking Member Underwood, thanks for your questions and your support. First, to answer your question about the alien expulsion operation flights, to date, since 20 January, the Coast Guard has flown 157 of those flights in support of other Department of Homeland Security components for southern border security operations. As to the other operations that where we have surged assets to the southern border, and for us, the southern border also includes the border approaching Florida and our territories in the Caribbean. That's part of the southern border for us as well. And so we took planned operations from some other areas and in consultation, principally supporting combatant commanders. I consulted with those combatant commanders and the Department of Defense and briefed the Secretary on my plans to temporarily change some of those planned deployments. Now, this type of decision is not unprecedented, and we make those tough trade-offs all the time because there's an increasing demand for Coast Guard resources and always a limited number of cutters, boats, aircraft, and crews to provide them. And so that's part of the risk decision that I make in consultation with our area commanders.
Have any personnel, vessels, air assets, or other resources been pulled from the Coast Guard's Arctic strategy to accommodate the southern border surge?
No, Ranking Member Underwood, they have not.
What about your Indo-Pacific mission? Did you reduce lift capacity in the region in favor of more deportation flights here? And are we going to be slower in building our presence there as a result of the surge?
Ranking Member Underwood, there were 2 operational deployments that I directed be changed through that process I described before. And I want to be specific about that. One was a planned patrol working for Indo-Pacific Command, one of our national security cutters. And I consulted with Admiral Paparo about that before making that change. But there's been no change in our permanent presence in the Indo-Pacific. The other change in the Atlantic, you asked about the Arctic. We had the cutter Calhoun, another national security cutter that was scheduled to support a port visit for a senior leader meeting of the Arctic Coast Guard Forum in Iceland, and we canceled that planned meeting. It wasn't an operational meeting, and so that was related to the Arctic, but I wanted to be specific and clear in my answer.
And what about the Great Lakes, where the Coast Guard plays a critical role in commerce and safety for the community I represent? Has there been any change to the staffing plans for the Great Lakes region?
There have not been changes to that staffing plan. Our presence in the Great Lakes remain as important as always, which includes our domestic icebreaking presence there.
Excellent. In your testimony, you also wrote that you are tripling the number of forward deployed air and surface assets at the southern border and simultaneously seeking total operational control of the region. It's clear strategic trade-offs are being made, and I'm concerned about the impact on your other missions. The Coast Guard desperately needs more funding to meet its mission, and the passage of a reconciliation bill is far from guaranteed at this time. And Coasties, like most Americans, are struggling with the rising cost of living. I speak frequently with young guardsmen and women who struggle to afford housing and access medical care, which is why I was horrified last Friday when we received a last-minute addition to your spend plan for fiscal 25, a new $50 million Gulfstream 5 for Secretary Noem's personal travel coming from the Coast Guard budget. She already has a Gulfstream 5, by the way. This is a new one. And so, Admiral, I have just one question for you here. Have you received any outreach, requests, or any other communication from anyone above you at DHS or any political appointee in the Trump administration regarding a new plane for the Secretary?
Ranking Member Underwood, so first of all, thank you for the support of the committee and the continuing resolution for 25. And as part of that spend plan to address the needs of our service members and their families, we're able to provide that cover the pay raise for military and civilian personnel, including a targeted pay raise for our junior enlisted personnel, which was essential. You had asked about the military command and control aircraft. So first of all, meeting the needs of our Coast Guard men and women that are doing frontline operations is my top operational priority, and it's a top operational priority of the Secretary. She's been clear with that to me, and I know she testified to that effect before the subcommittee last week. The Coast Guard, like the other military services, operates 2 military long-range command and control aircraft. This is part of our military operational fleet of aircraft. These are C-37 variants. The older one is a C-37 Alpha variant. And like a lot of the rest of our operational aviation fleet and our cutters and our boats and our shore facilities, it's old and it's approaching obsolescence and the end of its service life. The avionics are increasingly obsolete. The communications are increasingly unreliable, and it's in need of recapitalization like much of the rest of the fleet. But this aircraft is necessary to provide the Secretary, the Deputy Secretary, me as the Acting Commandant, the Acting Vice, and our 2 area commanders with secure, reliable, on-demand communications and movement to go forward, visit our operating forces conducting the missions, and then come back here to Washington to make sure we can work together to get them what they need.
Mr. Chairman, my time's expired. I just want to note that I didn't hear the Admiral answer the question about whether he was directed to purchase this new Gulfstream 5, and I just want to note that as I conclude my time. Thank you. I yield back.